we're now live. I'm still going to give it a second because it always does that ugly Hangout logo in the beginning that I cut off. Okay, Mike, we're here with our Doctor Who episode review for episode 6, The Caretaker.
Yes, part 1 of Saying Goodbye to Clara.
Yeah, I think so. And because this is one of those episodes where the monster doesn't really matter. It's one of those, which I like, those sort of touchy episodes where you're learning about people. And Danny finally finds out the secret of the Doctor, and just like we've seen the pattern of the Doctor dealing with pretty much any other male he runs into, is he has like ego problems with them. And sure enough, and of course on top of everything, Danny's a soldier. So I like the way that so of course the Doctor doesn't like Danny and Danny doesn't like the Doctor, but I really like that the premise for why the Doctor doesn't like Danny doesn't have anything to do with jealousy for Clara, which I kind of like. At least I don't sense it that way. It's certainly not romantic jealousy.
Yeah, no, it's the jealousy of a father.
Yeah,
a caretaker, Don.
Although it is funny when he thinks that she's dating the guy in a bow tie, and later he's like a certain handsome young gentleman, and like it's almost like it's a weird, like he's selling it, but it's this weird thing of like, I'm not interested in you because I'm not into that. Like I'm not into that part of life, but I'm flattered that you dig a guy that looks like I used to look, you know?
Yeah, what's cool about it is it's just an example of what, them doing what should and can be done with the Doctor portrayed by an old man or an older man, actually the oldest man to play him so far, is that I like that they've just abandoned any of the romantic aspects of the Doctor's relationship. And it's interesting that you would think that if he's the same character, because he is, that he was, then why wouldn't, if it was romantic, why wouldn't that continue? And yet at the same time, there was a time when it wasn't romantic before, say Eccleston.
Yeah.
And it became romantic with a younger version of the Doctor. So it's cool to see them just embracing that. Like I'm really glad because he has seemed like he's just been a jerk for the first several episodes of the season, and it was a neat payoff to get to see that his distance from her and his sort of establishing and reestablishing that he doesn't find her attractive. There's a new light and aura around his attitudes.
Yeah, and it's funny because I think one of the only tender things he's done in his entire time as a Doctor is that moment very early on. I think it's in his first appearance when he turns to Clara and says, "I'm not your boyfriend." And she says, "I didn't think so." And he said, "No, I wasn't talking about you." But I mean, if you think back now on these 6 episodes, that's really one of the only tender things he's done with her. There's this really cool relationship that they have where he carries on and she like puts up with it or whatever, like, and she fires back just as easily. But and I really like how successfully they've sold the relationship between Danny and Clara. Like I want to see them together, and I want that to be successful. And it bothered me that when he was, when he was like, "All right, I'm done with this. You've been lying to me," and it's all really relevant reactions and really realistic reactions that someone would have.
Yeah, his character has become very endearing. I'd love it if he manages to stick around even after she goes. I mean, we know, in the news she's going at Christmas, and I can't imagine that he could stick around beyond her because I'm assuming they're going away together.
Who knows, though? I mean, they could write it so that they separate and come back together. I mean, because I was thinking the same thing. I would really like to see him be the Doctor's companion because one of the things that I think could work, particularly now that romance isn't sort of a thing, and again, they proved it with Donna, and they've done it in the past where they can have a male-female companion Doctor relationship that wasn't romance-oriented. But if there's ever been a really good time to have a guy run around with the Doctor, it works. Now that's never really been in the history of the show. I mean, there always seems to be a female assistant with him, but anyway, I think it's really as far as only one person with him. I mean, there was Adric and what's his name, Mark Strickson's character, Turlo. But anyway, I think it would be cool, and I like that Danny's so action oriented, like, and he does that flip and all these other things. Like, there's a lot of really neat opportunities to having him be a companion for the Doctor.
Well, one thing that was cool was that they've established that another character played by that same actor exists in the universe in the
Yeah.
form of their like great grandson or whatever he might be.
Yeah.
It's and he was actually referred to again. I think in this last episode.
Well, because the doctor finally meets Danny and realizes he's met him, and she's like, did you recognize him? And then he's, what about the name Pink? And, and he's
Right.
like, oh, it's a color, and
Yeah.
he's being real obtuse.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes because it's really enjoyable to watch the character take on the true grandfatherly nature of the doctor, and like times when he doesn't seem to be getting along with Clara, like in the episode where they had traveled out to the end of time,
Right.
The listen, I guess
Yeah,
it was. There's that scene where he yells at her to get back in the TARDIS, and he yells at her the way a father will yell at a child, not just when they want them to do something, but when safety is at risk. Like, he gives no option. There's no room for discussion, and she's actually mad and sort of hurt, almost in tears the way a child would be. So it was cool to see them demonstrate that relationship will exist. He's that sufficiently older than her that her sort of tough-headedness collapses, under the weight of his age and wisdom.
And that I'm going to be really, particularly speaking of her tough-headedness, one of the things I took away from this episode that I thought was very interesting, because I know it'll be dealt with, is this episode ends and she's in a position that doesn't match her character and really doesn't match modern storytelling, particularly for stories in the present, where these two men are like obsessed with protecting her. And she's so far, she's yet to say, hold on, like I can take care of myself or whatever. And I think it's very complex and interesting storytelling, because the very on the nose common thing nowadays would be for her to resent and give them a lecture. And she doesn't seem to be doing that. But at the same time, I know that's not going to go unresolved. Like, it's too obvious the way these two men are sort of, basically very straightforwardly talking about how it's their jobs to protect her and keep her safe. And even when Danny's not, he's like, well, that man better keep you safe. And these other things, it's almost an old-fashioned sort of sense. And I don't think the show is presenting that as a negative. But at the same time, I really think we're going to continue to see a sophisticated approach to that. And I'm looking forward to it, because I think it's going to be interesting and better than a lot of the approaches that we see in more ham-handed storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, the whole idea of if a day ever comes when men don't feel an inherent need to protect the women that they love, we will probably see the end of the race.
Yeah.
So
procreation.
Regardless of whether women can protect themselves, that's not the point. Is the idea that a male will feel some determination to protect the woman he loves or the children he loves. The same would be true for a woman towards a man, I'm sure.
Well, that's what I mean by the sophistication of the storytelling. Yeah,
but so I like the fact that they embrace that classic behavior on the part of the two of them. It's chivalrous. I mean, it's it is what it is. It's fatherly. It's husbandly. It's being a gentleman.
Yeah. But I can't wait to see them. And I also thought it was because again, like I said, the action in the episode, the monster that's coming for the school, isn't really important. It's the plot line to drive the interpersonal stuff. But the doctor has a lot of really cute moments with particularly the one girl student. They have likely enjoyed her. And at one point when it sounded like he was going to take her with him, and he sort of does, I was like, I could see this girl running around with him for an episode or two. That could be pretty funny to see the doctor running around with a 13-year-old, but I guess he can't. Like, it just would seem inappropriate. But I got a kick out of that character and a lot of the stuff that was going on at the school. And they really do a good job of filling out that school with interesting characters.
It's funny. I was surprised when the teachers were all standing in the room and the doctor walks in as the caretaker.
Yeah.
I don't know why I didn't see that coming. Yeah. Like when that door opened, it was him. I just did not see. He had said he was going under deep cover, and then he goes to the door and he's investigating her. It's funny just how simple that was, but it was delightful.
Yeah. And how crummy he was at it, sort of like well, he wasn't crummy at it. He just reveals very quickly that what he considers important for his disguise is not what anybody else would consider important.
Yeah,
and, just really cool. And then finally, I think that we're finally on the cusp. I mean, it's episode 6. I think we're on the cusp of really these teasers at the end of the episode for heaven and the implication that this woman, when the guy says, "Well, where's God?" and he says she's busy. I think that we're also coming to a head with that storyline, and I really look forward to, and maybe it'll be the next episode, looking forward to getting to the episode where we find out more, because they've done a good job of not being frustrating, but teasing it interestingly enough that I'm ready for more.
I'm also intrigued by the fact that they've left some things unrepeated. And, in the first episode, his thoughts about his own face and how it was familiar, and his thoughts about how not just his face, but certain things that were unfolding were familiar to him. I'm surprised. I don't think that's been repeated since the first episode.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting because I think we talked about this during that episode when we did record an episode about it. It'll be curious to see in hindsight whether that was just lip service, like somebody felt like they had to address the fact that the actor was in a previous episode, or if it was true, if it's a true storyline.
I mean, I think it's got to be a true. Go ahead.
No, you're right. I mean, I hope so, because but Moffat has done a lot of, to this day the silence still isn't explained. Like, he does do that, and maybe again in bigger, wider view, he does the show for 7 years, and all of a sudden I look back and say, oh, I can't believe I thought he forgot about the silence. But I mean, there was that whole season, the silence has fallen, and it's never addressed. Like, it's never, and that's not ever addressed. It's addressed, but it's only a battle is won, and there's still no, like, what is the silence? So I will be very curious.
I was intrigued by earlier in the season when they went to the end of the universe and they were listening to the silence, and I thought there was going to be a relationship, but I don't think there is.
And
I think he was talking about literal silence.
Yeah, but at the same time, I was wondering about that, because when I thought the same thing, I'm like, well, we're back to the silence, because it took me a while to realize, wait, the silence thing was never really resolved. And then ever since then, every now and then, silence is referred to, and it always sticks out to me. And I feel like it might be intentional, but again, only time will tell.
Well, it also means that if his clever writing. I mean, he's always described as clever, and if essentially if that was at the very beginning of the first episode of his tenure, it would make sense, and it wouldn't surprise me if he intends to end where he began and to seem, or to actually have had that all in mind the whole time.
Yeah, no, it's true, and I think he did an interview recently where he said that basically he's not thinking about going anywhere, and so that'd be kind of cool if he stuck around for a while. But you're right. I mean, the more time he has and the more meat he has underneath his belt for storytelling, it'll make that even more powerful. Because we already know from that first episode, and even Matt Smith's blatant appearance in it, that he's not trying to distance. Like, how when he brought in Matt Smith, he was very much like, this is season 1 as far as I'm concerned, and he didn't really refer back to what happened before, and it all happened, but it wasn't important until that 50th anniversary episode when he brought back David Tennant and those characters and Rose. And he does not doing that now. Like, he's very much tied, and it's more than just Clara. Like, so it's going to continue, and I really look forward to it.
Well, do you remember in the Matt Smith? It was in, I think, Matt Smith's first season. There's a scene where he and who are the lizard people who live underground?
The
Silurians. I kept wanting to say Santarans. There's a scene where they're looking through binoculars and they see Amy and Rory waving at them from a distance. That has never been addressed. And I can't, even within the episode, it felt like a plant that they could do anything with.
Yeah.
I just have a sense that there's going to be a return to that.
Yeah, and that would be really cool.
I mean, who knows what it'll mean?
Yeah, and particularly as she's becoming she's in movies, and now she's got a network television show in America, and I hope that she just doesn't get too big to do her own return appearance for for things. But she appeared for that one episode, so hopefully it keeps up.
With the exception of Eccleston, I don't think anybody in Doctor Whodom is too cool to return to it.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Such a in England, it's such a royal sort of thing.
Yeah, he's Superman. He's their equivalent of Superman.
Yeah.
We have Superman and Batman and Spider-Man, and they have James Bond and Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes, etc. All right, that'll be our review. We will be back next week to review episode 7.
Yes.
Bye-bye.